Yeah, let's go. My small story is. Let's go. My small story is, and talk to
My small story is.
Yeah.
Oh, I was like, my small story is the wall.
The wall.
With these guys.
Okay.
Sheila.
Hey, Sheila.
I have to dash. Sorry.
And Gamze.
I have to. Hi.
How are you guys?
And this is Anna.
Hey, Anna. How are
Who's
you?
playing the wall.
Oh, the wall. How difficult is it to play a wall?
Oh my God. This is the day to ask. It's hard. It's hard. Yeah.
A lot of stretching involved, or just?
I know. I'm like, you're like, hey, we're ready to fucking move. Oh, sorry. It's hard. It's hard in the sense of picking up different people's emotions, and you'll see.
Yeah.
And playing different characters and kind of doing the switching. Yeah, it's cool.
Looking forward to the wall.
Nice. So yeah, and then we have Azza doing marketing and
Thank you, Azza.
yeah, well, we're trying to kind of. It's interesting actually, all the marketing stuff, like thinking about how to. Bye, lady. Did you see the picture that I put of the
this
fabric?
The fabric on the
Yeah, so
ceiling.
last night, basically, in the evening on the roof, we dyed 100 yards of fabric gray and then had them hanging across my roof.
Really?
Like blowing in the wind to dry them. And it was like, yep, this is bootleg. We're doing this on my roof illegally. But, yeah.
So what's the wall all about? I mean, what's the impetus?
The impetus for it was basically...
Oh, like yeah. Thank you so much.
And this is Lisa, who's the assistant director.
Hey, Lisa. How are you?
And she's fabulous. We'll talk. Yeah. Cool. Yeah, and we can start. I'll get my stuff ready. We can.
Yeah, you get together and we walk into.
Yeah. So basically, the impetus for it was partly traveling to Palestine.
Okay.
And seeing the wall there and thinking about like physical boundaries that people put up. And then I had personally gone through some losses, both due to death and in relationships with people, that made me start building up my own kind of interior walls. And I noticed myself closing off in certain ways. And so I was trying to like investigate the idea of external and internal barriers and why we put walls up, why we break them down, and that whole kind of thing. And it turned into this play. I started writing it, just like doing free writes, basically, through this artist activist program I was in.
Okay.
And the free writes, yeah, I just kind of started writing it, and I wrote it actually as narrative, like as a short story. And so I wrote the whole play as a short story that I'm adapting, that I adapted for stage in the process. So people are always talking in third person about themselves, and there's the wall, like, so it's this interesting mix of narrative and then into dialogue and like.
Very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of how it all started.
There's probably a list of various types of walls now you've probably come up to with that.
Yeah, it's interesting based on like, so one of the cast members grew up in Germany, and so like her experience, and she knew a lot of references in terms of the Berlin Wall, whereas another girl in the cast also has spent time in Palestine and done a lot of activism around that. So a lot of this relates to what her and I thinking about Palestine, but it's really interesting how, because it's a science fiction play, because it's allegorical, not really set anywhere in particular, that it can then apply like across the board, which is great.
Where are you from?
I grew up in Michigan and Germany.
I'm from Detroit, by the way.
Are you?
Yeah.
Okay, I grew up in the suburbs of Detroit till I was like 10.
Okay.
And my mom is from Nebraska and my dad is from Lebanon.
Really?
So kind of like a little bit all over. And I think that's also part of it, actually. Like I have always, and Azza and I have talked about this because she's also like international all over the place, but just that feeling of like, what are boundaries, what can you cross, what can you not, based on your personal experiences, and just...
We say boundaries, like even like when moving to one place to another, what's culturally embraced, what's culturally, I don't know, hesitant?
Exactly. Yeah, I think so. I think it's like, yeah, like what, I don't know, it's interesting. Like
what's shocking to us is not shocking to others.
Other people, and when you're in, like, I think it's interesting how certain things in your own society, like certain things I wouldn't do in the States or certain boundaries I wouldn't cross as like an American, and because of the strict, whether it's, who knows, whether it could be class or racial boundaries or whatever, certain things you're like, oh, I shouldn't do this because that's what I've been I'm going to say indoctrinated to
Yeah,
do.
yeah.
But when I'm in like another country, I don't know any of those boundaries. So like I'm like, oh, I can do this, and people forgive me for it because I'm a foreigner or whatever.
Do you feel like more like you're Lebanese, or you feel like you're more American, or are you being perceived by other people? I mean, like.
I mean, I think it's just that term, the third culture kid.
Third culture kid.
Yeah, just like parents from 2 different countries and then grew up in another country. So that's kind of just like a mix, like I'm more American
Transcultural,
than anything, than anything else. But I don't necessarily feel like, yeah, I would say I'm more American than anything else. But I feel very, very attached to these like different places where I have family and friends where I grew up, and yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
So that's kind of.
Where are you from, Martha?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh my God. Well, I'm Sudanese and Somali.
Okay.
But I grew up in France and in Kenya, and I've been here in New York for about 10, 12 years. So I definitely understand.
Yeah,
like,
when she's talking about that wall, that's what I was wondering.
Well, it was so funny
Yeah.
how we even like we did the same master's program in arts politics, and she was the year before me.
Yes.
Yeah, and how people were like, you two haven't met yet?
So what was your master's? What you got? What was your?
Why don't you explain the master's you got for it?
It's so hard. Can you explain it?
I would just say it's like
Yeah.
using arts for political and social activism,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah.
It's an amazing program.
It's an amazing program, and what's really funny is like it's
What's the
very
program
small.
called?
It's called Arts Politics.
NYU.
At
Okay.
Tisch NYU. It's
Okay.
a very new program. I think it's about 4 or 5 years old, and it's like pretty much you are in a room with all these artists,
Okay.
you know, from different like kind of backgrounds and fields, and they're like, you know, you have your dancers and the performers, and you have like, you know, filmmakers, but all of them are very politically conscious. And so it's pretty much just a program where we just ask a whole lot of questions, you know? We do. It's all very critical, very political, but it's also about like how you can become your own agent, you know? How like you don't have to wait to either get a job or institution for you to be, not to be qualified, but like to change, you know, like you are the change.
Yeah, and exactly, because like that's even this project. It was interesting. A girl wrote an article about this project for this women's art activism magazine, and in it she talked about like we were talking, and she was also in the program in my year, and I was like, something about me being like sick of waiting for like some theater to accept the play, da da da. So I was just like, okay, like I'm gonna write this, I'm gonna raise money for it, raised like $5,000, and was just like find the people, kind of just. Because you have to, like, you can't wait, because then also if your work doesn't suit if your work doesn't suit traditional models or institutional models of what something's meant to be, then they're not going to accept it anyway, you know? And it's like, how do you craft the things you want to see? You have to do it, and then other people can model off of that.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why like I was interested in working with Noelle in The Wall, because it resonated so much with the themes that I am doing in my own, you know, my work, the idea of like minority, the other, the haves and the have-nots, and all these kind of stories, because it's a story that is like, it's so rarely, I don't know, maybe in plays and theater that's a sci-fi. You think that it should be like, oh, it's a film, you know? It's like, but it's like, it's a play, and
they can go a lot of places with this as a film.
Yeah, well, but what's really interesting is like the theatricality of it. We have no props at all except in orange. We have like one prop. Everyone, and we're not using mime to like show things. It's all abstract gestures. And so like the idea of the theatricality of it. So then I think that idea that it can become molded to anything, and how do we make this story uniquely theatrical?
Gotcha.
I think that's also my thing with theater versus film, is that like, because I love film, I love movies, I think it's a beautiful form, but I think theater often tries to imitate it because that's the more popular, that's the more mainstream thing. And then it's like, well, then why write a play? Like, what can we do that's so uniquely theatrical that can only be done in live performance? So then otherwise the medium of theater is going to die and not be interesting or of use to society if it's like just doing the same thing film's doing, and film can do it in a much more extensive, realistic manner, can be spread to many more people. So I think that that's like a big thing that I think I address as an artist, like theatrically. I'm always asking myself, why do theater? Why make this theater? Why make this live performance?
Great questions. Want to walk?
Yeah, let's walk. Is this one of your guys or no?
No, I just left it behind. Yeah.